my boss at my job literally drinks like 6 and 6.
Six
Like,
and six.
and like when he gets it, it's almost like it's like printer paper white because there's so much cream in it. It's unfucking real, and he just slams it. And he's like, "This will be like my second one today." And it's like, how are you alive?
Yeah.
How is anything inside of you still working? Hey, howdy, 2689. What do you know?
All right. I think we are good to go.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. Well, thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in. This is another episode of the Scoped Exposure podcast. We travel down to Connecticut, of all places, and we welcome
Tell me about it.
Matt from Boundaries. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Of course. As far as people that might not know you, can you just give me a proper introduction of what you do in the band and how long you guys have been going for?
Sure. So I sing for the band based out of Connecticut called Boundaries. I've been in the band for 5-ish years, but it's been around for like 7.
Okay.
Um, it started technically. There's one original member left. Our guitarist Zadek. He started it when he was like a freshman in high school, and they just played like Moth to Flames covers and shit. Um, but then a few years passed, and like all of the people in that band left, and then my band broke up, and then our other guitarist Corey, his band broke up, and so like a bunch of projects just kind of ended all at the same time.
Mm.
But the people that still wanted to keep playing music were just like, hey, let's all just make one kind of mega thing together, because my thing broke up, your thing broke up, and your thing is one member. So what if we all just join you?
Yeah.
So that's been going with more or less the same members since 2015.
Yeah. Mega metalcore is probably the genre that you guys would fall into.
Yeah, just some type of local supergroup.
Yeah. Yeah. So you guys have a release coming down the pipe in the next couple weeks, as far as the time of recording this. Out on Unbeaten Records, if that's
Yes.
yes. And yeah, we're gonna chat about that. We're gonna chat with you about some of the artistic direction around some of the videos and musical stuff. Before we get super into the conversation, though, got to do our little bev check. So
Naturally.
as I was mentioning to Matt just prior to getting started here, hit the farmer's market earlier today, and I got a local Calgary better. It's like a cold pressed juice.
Oh my, that looks fantastic.
So it's rose petal limeade.
The fuck? Looks delicious. Are you kidding?
It's pretty funny, having the ranges of like bev checks as straight up just water to like some sparkling water to some fancy stuff, and I feel like this is probably the most
The
fancy.
fucking rose petal limeade? Yeah, you're drinking fantasy juice. You're drinking
Yeah.
make believe.
Yeah, it's something straight out of Disney for sure. As I open this up, do you want to tell the folks at home what you're sipping on?
Oh, just black coffee, always.
Right.
My room has no heat, so as we approach the winter months, the only way to really stay warm is just always be drinking something hot.
Yeah.
Because like you can put on as many hoodies and as many blankets and all that as you want, but like your hands are always gonna get cold. And I'm not gonna sit here on my computer wearing gloves like a lunatic, fucking mashing 16 keys at once. So I just sit here and I just hold the mug, and then I go and I do a little type-a-roo, and then I go back and I hold the mug again.
Right. Do you rock a certain uh kind of bean, or do something local, or are you kind of just like bulk barn, as much coffee as I can get for the cheapest amount?
Yeah, if I'm just at home, I'm not that picky, because I mean Connecticut has like a few local coffee spots, but it's not a big state, and a lot of it's very suburban. There's not like cool hip spots to check out. There's a few, but they're all 40 minutes away from each other.
Gotcha.
So if I'm just making coffee at home, then it's usually some version of like a Pete's brand, because I think Pete's is super consistent and their dark roast is pretty good. And when it comes to like making coffee at home, I usually just make like the darker the better, because then it's kind of harder to mess up the flavor.
Yeah.
versus like a light roast with a fucking sprinkle of this and a dash of that. But then you make it at home and it just tastes like hot water.
Yeah.
So dark roast, it's bitter, but like at least it's supposed to be.
Yeah, the margin of error for for getting something that's too watery is far less the darker it goes. Yeah, definitely.
Exactly. That's my end game here is to make it in 3 minutes and just have it feel and taste horrible, but like coffee's supposed to.
Yeah.
And then, a couple pots of that a day, it keeps you regular.
I remember I was talking with someone on the DMs about like I couldn't imagine drinking my coffee black, and sometimes it's like, oh, I'll throw a little bit of like oat milk or something in there, and then I'm just like, that was the wrong decision. It should always be black. It should always just hit your like palate just as strong
yeah,
as
it should just
possible.
open your chest up.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
straight up.
I wasn't always a black coffee drinker, but because of how much coffee I drink just like regularly, it was just so much sugar and so much cream. Like I was putting so much shit into me, like with
Yes.
just coffee being the vehicle. And I was like, okay, if I don't want to just stop drinking coffee, I should probably stop filling it with garbage.
Right.
And so at least then, drinking black coffee, it's essentially like calorie neutral. It's as long as you don't add stuff to it, you're more or less fine. As long as you don't develop like some insane like reliance on caffeine. So as long as I stay below that, I'm cool.
Yeah, not to like talk about coffee for 5 to 10 minutes on this podcast, but you're pretty close to the Canadian border, so I'm sure you know what Tim Hortons
Oh yeah, I'm
is. Yeah.
familiar.
So yeah, like when I was like first going to like when I was in high school, people would do like the double double, which is like 2 cream, 2 sugar. But then as I like got more into coffee culture and then would see what other people who liked coffee, but they would do a triple triple or a 4x4. I'm like, do you
Jesus
want
Christ.
any coffee with your cream and sugar and just
Yeah, you're drinking a milkshake. What are you doing?
straight up?
That's the thing. Like, anytime someone is like, "Can I get a coffee with fucking 9 of this and 17 of that and a squirt of this?" I was like, "You don't like coffee. It's so simple. Just stop drinking it because you clearly do not like it. You like it with all this other shit in it."
Yeah, just go and chew on like an actual like sugar cube and
Yes, go eat a chocolate bar. What the fuck are you doing with coffee?
Yeah. I love that we jammed on the triple triples and the 4x4s, but
No way, bro. No. My boss at my job literally drinks like 6 and 6. Like, and like when he gets it, it's almost like it's like printer paper white because there's so much cream in it. It's unfucking real, and he just slams it. And he's like, "This will be like my second one today." And it's like, how are you alive?
Yeah.
How is anything inside of you still working?
Yeah, for me, I definitely like weaned down over time, and then I think it was the morning of my me and my wife's wedding. I just woke up and I was like, "Yep, it's just gonna be black coffee going forward," and so that's kind of how I
Yeah,
remember the set date.
You just gotta decide, like, I'm gonna stop.
Yeah.
And like in the beginning, I was like, Christ, how does anyone do this? I'm drinking mud with rocks in it.
Right.
But then just it also helps like finding a brand that you like, and it's like your type of, yeah, it's bitter, but it's like the kind you like. Because there's like Starbucks hot coffee, fucking undrinkable. Not for me. No thanks.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's types that are better, that are more for your palate, and just experiment. Go get a pound of this, a pound of that. Try it out.
Yeah, like get, it doesn't cost much to go get some like locally roasted beans and get an AeroPress and just, start small and then build up to getting all the, the scales and frothing.
Oh
the
yeah,
milk
if
and
you
all
want to be
that
like a
shit.
coffee, that's the thing. I don't know if I could ever be like a coffee guy. I don't know if there's anything more punishing than like a dude who's really into coffee. No thanks.
Yeah. I think it's like there's a weird gray area where I am where it's like I can appreciate it and you know taste the nodes and different things, but I'm not like, oh, I can only have beans from Kenya or
Yeah,
wherever.
how is this grounded? It better not be with an electric. It better be hand ground. Like, no, come on, relax. Yeah, I could never do that.
Yeah.
I like checking out local flavors and shit for sure. Like anytime on tour, I'm like coffee spot near me that's not a chain.
Yeah.
Because that's a fun thing to kind of localize yourself with an area of like, oh well, this is what their stuff is more like.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be like the meta of coffee. That shit, who could care?
Yeah. I think with any interest, whether it's hardcore or coffee, this, that, or the other, um, you know, realizing how that there's almost like an infinite dig that you can do on it.
Hmm.
But, when you get to a certain spot, you're like, yeah, I think this is good for me. And then,
Yeah,
slowly over time, but some people just get obsessed and they're just like so far down the rabbit hole. So, whatever.
yeah. My personality is the coffee guy.
Right.
That's
Yeah. Anywho, so Matt, we how I start all these podcasts, that kind of set the tone for the rest of it, even though we have talked about caffeine and the mud for 9 minutes here already. But I always ask my guests how they got into heavy music, at the very beginning stages. So
Mhm.
let's go back in time. Give me the Matt hardcore origin story as far as discovering heavy music, and what were the influences that kind of put you on the path of doing what you do.
Sure. So earliest memory of it is definitely just like what my dad would play in the car, because he always had like a CD collection that wasn't like necessarily like hardcore, but it was like metal or metal adjacent. And so that was like my earliest memory is like memorizing like Disturbed songs and stuff like that, because like I didn't know what the words meant, but like phonetically I would memorize them, and so I would like sing along to it, but just like kind of by sounding it out, and then I'd get in trouble for saying fuck because I'm like 5. But from there I kind of carried that a few years into like really just like anything I could find. It was Alice in Chains, it was Disturbed, it was AC/DC, and like I mean, it's kind of all over the spectrum as far as like heavy music, but it was just like anything with like an edge to it, anything that's not just like Radio Disney. So from there, I have an older brother. He's 5 years older than me, so he's always been like sort of a generation ahead as far as like what he finds, and then he would bring a lot of that stuff back to me. So like it's like for my 12th birthday, I think it was, he got me Volume 3 by Slipknot, and whatever that third Atreyu record was now, Death Grips on Yesterday, I think it's called.
Is that the one with the
Um,
ship, or
it's
is?
the one with the Shadow guy.
Oh, yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
yeah, Lead's. I think the ship is like Lead Sails Paper Anchors or something, and I
yeah.
think that's the record after, and that's when they started to get pretty fucking bad.
Yep.
There's there's like 2 good songs in that record. Um, but Death Grip on Yesterday is just kind of a good record,
Mhm.
and obviously everything before it. But that was more so my introduction into more like core music, like listening wise. But I wasn't going I didn't know if there was like a local version of that. What I was doing was I was going to like local like hardcore punk shows, like crust shows. Um, that was the version of like heavy music that I had locally
Right.
at like VFWs and like crust houses. I would be in a basement with 7 other people listening to a band set that like the whole set was like 9 minutes, and then maybe they had a shirt, maybe they had a tape, and then that was it. And then just call my parents to come pick me up in the middle of nowhere. Um, so I didn't really get into like the version of music that I'm playing now for a while, but I started early with just like I used to play like drums
Okay.
and in like hardcore punk bands, just like D beat, fast, fast, fast. Each song is 60 seconds long, maybe.
Yeah.
That was my introduction to it.
Oh, okay. So, started with the very raw, like unpolished version of like DIY music, and then
Hmm.
got, slowly over time saw, um, just manifest seeing the manifestation of like the, you know, not like the local disturbs, but like, people that were more in line with that heavier sound, and
Yeah,
longer
just
songs as well.
yeah, the more time I spent near it, the more avenues you find for what other people are doing.
Right.
Because like when I was going to like punk shows, 2, 3 times a month, pretty much just like anytime I wasn't in school, so like every weekend. Um, that was just the version of it I knew.
Mhm.
I wasn't aware of other ones that were happening near me because there's not, I'm 13 or 14 years old. I don't have like a big social network through which I can speak to people. I'm always the youngest kid in the room.
Mhm.
Like me and my other friend is usually my friend McLean. We're a couple of like actual teenagers, and everyone else in that room is probably the age I am now, which is 26. Like just drinking, and we're like, this is. I just want to see bands. Please don't talk to me or offer me anything. Um, but a little. Sometimes you just gotta jump in the deep end of the pool, and then
Yeah.
so it was just like I just want to be near music, so fuck it.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of, I'm 27 now, and it's very weird. I think growing up, I was always, whether it was music or with like other stuff, I felt like I was always surrounded by people who were older than me, and then it's like
Hmm.
I blinked, and now I am the older person to a lot of these, younger
Yeah, for
kids.
sure.
So it's just like weird how that has come full circle.
Yeah, I mean, it's a young man's game. You definitely can age out of it, especially if you're not careful and like you're here for like kind of the wrong reasons, and like your motivation is to be like look at me popular. That's something that has a half life like that.
Hmm.
You can only be the thing everyone's looking up to for so long before it's like, yeah, but now you're like 28
Yeah.
and you're yelling into a microphone for a living. Like that's cool and all, but it's going to be less cool to the younger audience who's just like 28 sounds really old. You're ancient. You should get out of here. But if you're doing it because you like doing it and just music and creation is important to you, then you don't give a fuck what everyone around you thinks. And so now you can hang out as long as you want.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I had a little bit of I think like it was maybe 3 or 4 years ago where I really learned just like turning 30 is not this like stamp of like, okay,
Like a
how
death
much.
sentence.
Yeah. Yeah, like I'm going to be, I'm 27 now, I'm going to be 28 in a few months, and like I'm stoked to be 30 cuz it's like when I was 20, like I think of that 10-year like span of time where I was like doing music, and like I probably wasn't going as, like the degrees of execution were varied, right? Like a lot of it was
Hmm.
just like being a young and dumb like 20-year-old and just like playing riffs that I look back on now. I'm like, ugh. But I'm stoked from like 30 to 40 to like at least still be doing something that's related in the hardcore space of things, but not feeling like, oh, I'm just like this, you know, like like this dinosaur that holds a camera at a show. Um,
Sure.
yeah. And I think like what's weird about that is when I was graduating high school, I graduated in 2011, and one of my teachers, we did like these like 10-year letters to ourselves.
Hmm.
So it's like write what you want, you know, where you think you're going to be in 10 years or whatever. And I think one of the things that I remember for sure is like, I hope that you're touring all the time and they have to mail in this letter to you versus like you have to come and pick it up at the school or whatever. So, even though like looking back, I'm not like, oh, maybe I didn't, travel as much with the bands I was in. I still have done a lot that I'm like stoked on, that it's not like I have to know that 5 to 10 year roadmap plan. So it's just kind of
Yeah,
interesting.
I mean, you constantly have to be adjusting expectations versus reality. Like when you're in high school, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I'm 26. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about.
Right.
Like, I think the only way to live a life that is uh, like internally and externally honest is to just be aware of how much you have no fucking clue what you're doing or what you're talking about.
Mhm.
Um, so an 18-year-old's version of what I should be doing in 10 years, why would you have any idea? Why it's like asking a 10-year-old what you're going to be doing when you're 18. There's no way. You have no fucking clue. You don't
Mhm.
know who you're going to meet. You don't know what's going to change. Like my goals in music change constantly because you learn more and oh, that's actually not the way that works. I'm not doing that because no one's doing that. I just had the wrong idea in my head.
Yeah.
You have to check that constantly against your peers, and also that's when people older than you do come in handy. It's
Yeah.
like, hey, you've been doing this for as long as I am old. You know, what am I doing wrong? Nothing. You're doing everything right. This is just how the process goes. Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah. And just like, I think there are some things that will always be like, so like, that I obsess over that are like, okay, this will come to fruition at some point in time, but it's not like, setting a, oh, it has to be done by the time I'm 30 or by the time I get married or whatever it is. Like, there's been so many things that just being open to just letting opportunities come but like still working hard, not just like sitting and
Yeah,
waiting for, the next thing to come. Like I think you should work hard, you should do shit that you love, and just be patient. That's kind
yeah.
of the
What's that
perfect
saying?
equation.
Like opportunity is like experience meeting being prepared or something like that.
Mm.
The idea that it's just like, oh, if I just hang out, something will fall into my lap is a very old school idea. Um, but also, like, if you're not checking your expectations, then when an opportunity does show up, you might mistake it as not an opportunity because it's not the thing you've been focused on.
Right. Yeah. That's
And
interesting.
like, I'm 26. I've like Boundaries has never done a tour that more than like 70 people showed up at. Um, and so if I compare that against some of my peers, even in like the same scene, I'm a fucking gigantic loser, because I'm not. This isn't my full income yet. I can't do it for a living. I still have to do this and 5 things on the side to pay my rent that aren't music related.
Yeah.
But when you adjust your goals, it's okay. And also, you just have to realize that like playing the dive bar and then fucking the CEO of Universal is like, "Hey kid, you got something special. I'm gonna sign you. We're gonna make you a big star." It's horseshit. Doesn't
Yeah.
happen.
Y-
Sometimes you just gotta get. It's right place, right time. That's what most things are as far as opportunities.
Yeah. I think like, going back to that like idea of like where I thought it would be at essentially this time, I guess 10 years ago.
Mhm.
Um, you know, this idea that I'm going to be playing these crazy stages, but like you said, like always adjusting to reality. Like if I have any like hardcore goals, it'd be like for my band to play like I don't know, like LDB Fest or something that's kind of like a middle of the road, like to higher hardcore fest. But if we did that once, I'd be like, yeah, I'd be stoked on that. But
Yeah.
it's not just like I need to play Lollapalooza and tour 300 days of the year. So like,
Mhm.
yeah, it's I feel like it's not letting the world and reality like bring you down to this like oh like I can't realize my dreams but like you said, like sometimes things can't be predicted. It's a equation of like working hard and, like there is luck in the equation of, bands getting signed all the
Of
time.
course.
All the time.
There's 300 awesome bands that you've never heard of, and they're playing exactly the music that you want to listen to, but you just don't know. You just
Yeah.
don't know about them
Yeah.
because with the barrier to entry for like writing and recording music being lower than ever as far as like how much more cost effective it is to just buy your own gear and write a demo in your basement. That's always been like the DIY thing, but now you can do that for like a few $100 and it will sound good. It
Yeah.
will sound like what studios sounded like 10 years ago,
Hmm.
especially if you throw out for like a mix and master from someone who really knows what they're doing.
Yep.
And so now there's so many people doing that. It's so saturated. Yes, there's more music than ever, but because there's so much, the noise is just so deafening. It's hard to find everything that you're actually interested in because you just don't know how to find it.
Yeah. And maybe that's a good segue into one of the questions I had here. So I was listening to a podcast you were on. I think it was with Ill Street News, and you were just
Yeah.
talking about how like it, gun to my head, I would probably put Boundaries in like the metalcore realm of things, as far as like a
Yeah.
subgenre. But you were talking about like there's always going to be people that are like, yeah, dude, love Boundaries. Like, I work out to that shit all the time. But
Hmm.
I think like the quote that I wrote down that you said is like, listening to my band should require effort. And I thought that was really interesting how, it's not just like, here's the chugs and the reats and like, here's that same part, but slowed down. Like, I really see the Boundaries, um, effort on the musical and the lyrical side as far as like really trying new things, really focusing on transitions and really making music that is heavy but also has substance. So do you want to like break down that idea of like, our band's just rushing to write the heaviest and most like ignorant shit that they can versus like, okay, I'm going to put a little bit more juice and life into this?
Yeah, sure. So pretty much all the writing and Boundaries is done by Corey and I. And so with that dynamic, we're constantly bouncing off each other as far as like what our end game is, with like how we want our music to sound and be presented. Um, he's always just trusted me completely as far as like whatever you're gonna write lyrically. I know we're enough releases down the road now that I know you're not gonna write something stupid. So go for it. You know, whatever you want to sort of turn the theme of the record into. He has confidence in me to do that.
Right.
And there's definitely times when we're writing music and I'm like, this should just get heavy. Like this should go into that. Because sometimes my instinct is based off of, just this is what another band would do. And so it could take him being like, yeah, but because it should do that, let's not do it. Um, like of course this progression and the way that this is building leads into this big moment, but do we want to turn that big moment into something like uh like a lead over this big ascending melodic part? Do we want to make something pretty, or do we want to make something heavy? Because there's plenty of bands making stuff that's heavy. Um, and I think personally, I don't really like most like melodic hardcore. And like it just feels like it doesn't do anything. It's constantly like teetering, but it won't go like full melody and be like something really big and beautiful and giant, but it also won't go the other way and be like, okay, we're gonna put like an actual breakdown here now. Like we're not gonna put mosh parts in our Twinkle Twinkle Little Star song. Um, except for like To the Wind. That band kicked ass. I don't know where they went. But To the Wind is a very good melodic hardcore band.
Hmm.
Regardless. I just I don't know. As far as like what other bands are doing, I think there are bands where it's just like, yeah, just show up and mosh to us. Like that's our whole end game, is to just be like almost like a social setting for people to just come and dance to. It's less about like what we're writing about and more about just like, wasn't that breakdown cool? And
Yeah.
I listen to those bands. I
Yeah.
love them. It's just not a band I want to be in. Um, I want to do something a little more, especially as far as like lyrically and like how I communicate my thoughts. Because that's something I've always had trouble with, is feeling like I'm understood or feeling like I really get heard by the people I speak to. So if I could transfer that into more of a musical setting where there is more focus on what is being said or why it's saying it or what the theme is, um, it offers a lot more avenues for me to have like my own catharsis regarding, hey, I have this feeling and I want to communicate it to people. Because I'm not good at doing that conversationally. But if I can like kind of distance myself and do it through a song, then it feels a little less revealing to me and a little more expressive. And so then I can say things that I otherwise would never share with strangers. Of course not. But when it's through a song, I feel much more comfortable doing so.
Yeah, it's kind of like the portal gateway, to kind of bridge that gap. But it's interesting to hear how you guys have almost like reverse engineered the whole like process versus like someone coming with a riff and then building off of that. It's like, okay, how do we want people to feel like overall, and then kind of working backwards to in the writing process. So that is very interesting to hear. You know, you were just expressing on how like, that's, a therapeutic way for you to kind of like get the ideas that maybe you wouldn't say in person, but like you can articulate them probably better through meticulous like songwriting processes. What is I think you brought it up on the other podcast about having your lyrical sheets as like anxiety diaries. I think that's the term you
Yeah.
use. Um, so like has that always? It's interesting too, like seeing a lot of bands will like do you write everything down in like a notebook, or do you put stuff on your phone and then transfer it over?
Yeah. I'm a big notebook guy. I'm
Okay.
big. I like having it all. I like having a catalog that I can then revisit.
Mm.
Um, Even if I never use a huge portion of it, because it's less like I need, we're writing a record, I need songs, let me go write. It's more like the writing is just always happening, and then when it's time to write music and we need songs, I can look back or, try to find things in the last year that relate to how I'm feeling currently or how I want to sort of thematically give a record or a release like a trajectory.
Yeah.
And so when I have, 6 or 7 notebooks in front of me and I'm kind of thumbing through all of them, and some are from, when I'm 18 years old, some are from this year, some are from 5 years ago. It just, it helps kind of build more of like almost like a character arc for like my own writing process. And so that makes it a little easier to view it as like, okay, well, all of these songs are related, but like this song should go first in the track listing because this song is written about a way I was feeling before I wrote this one. And so then it kind of gives it more of a timeline that I think is something a little more specific to us, or at least like my writing style, where it's not like just like 10 or 11 songs mashed together and it's like, yeah, song 3 and 7 are the good ones. It's more like, you like, if you're going to listen to the record, it makes the most sense in a very intentional way to start with track 1 and end on track 11.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's been funny to talk to people, and they go back in the day of like downloading music on LimeWire, and fast forward, you listen to those same records, but you're like, oh, I could only download these 3 songs off of this Slipknot record, and then now I'm like listening to the entire thing.
Yeah.
So, but I'm a major fan myself of like, like whether I'm in the car or on a walk with my dog, like listening to something front to back and see the
Oh
evolution
yeah.
and the themes play out versus like, oh, like the front half of this sucks and the back half is sick. But yeah.
Hmm.
So the new record that you guys have coming up, your Receding Warmth, the album name of that, is that something that was just we need to name it and it's off of a song, or is there something that's a little bit deeper down the rabbit hole that you can share there?
Yeah, your Receding Warmth is sort of like a specific non-specific like gesture, like accusation towards sort of the the way that most lives seem to play out, at least my own and the people around me. It's referential mostly to the idea that like when you're born, you have a lot of different support systems that prop you up, that teach you along the way. And as you get older and those things fall to the wayside, like, you have like school, you have parents, relationships, friends. But as you graduate, as loved ones die, as people move away and you become more and more dependent on yourself, those systems don't get replaced by anything. um, so your Receding Warmth is sort of follows the story of one of those events happening, and it starts with a very raw, upsetting, why did this happen? This is the way I feel about it. Into, by the middle of the record, it's more of an acceptance, more of a, okay, I feel this way now, I know why. But what should I do with it now that I've hit rock bottom? You can only go up, but how do I start going up? And by the end of the record, it's much more of a conclusion and more of a, I know where I started. I'm not there anymore. I'm not better, but I'm taking steps to continue in spite of that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, yeah. I think that the whole idea, like you were saying, like there's these moments where we have these like bubbles in our world, whether it's like this is my high school bubble, and then you start to like go to like do stuff outside of school, and then like that bubble pops, and like you don't talk to anybody when you went to your graduating class. At least I do. But
Right.
then like you said, like um, you know, having family members, and then maybe your family moves to a different city. I'm just more pulling from my own experiences, but like always realizing that things are temporary and adjustment, and sometimes we are ready for those changes in our lives, and sometimes we're not. So that's
Mhm.
I like the theme of that, and personally, I'm quite excited to hear the front to back listen of that. I know you guys have worked a lot with Eric Easterday on this record, doing kind of taking the music and showing that in a visual way with his creativity in the mix. He
Yeah.
mentioned a couple things on the podcast we did with him. I think the day that we recorded was when the second music video that you guys did dropped, with the whole
Okay.
like
The
I don't
animated one.
the animated one, yeah. But something I noticed is that the call it the main focus or talent or actor that's in all of these he's in every video. It's the same guy. So
Yeah.
is that something that he's going to be a kind of a character in the music that you're talking about, or was that just like, oh, it's the cheapest just to go with the same dude? Like, what was the move there?
No. So going into it, we knew that we wanted to do 3 videos. We knew that we wanted them to be like one storyline that happens over place of all 3, and so that kind of calls for having the same character. Um, so the overall storyline regarding like the 3 videos is essentially like a condensed version of the record, as far as how we see our character acting and feeling in the first video, which is very visceral. It's very on the surface. You don't have to dig too deep as far as like physical pain, and then like mentally being upset and being volatile and being this sort of very violent, explosive personality, and emotionally being unwell and unstable. And then as we move into the second song, with the overall theme of that sort of being like we are like personifying how he's feeling, especially with like animating his thoughts essentially. I didn't want it to be like going into it, if I wanted to give like anxiety and anger and being upset. I wanted to know what those would look like, versus just like, it's easy to do that through realism, like, oh, you're angry, so like, show him breaking something. Oh, you're sad, show him crying.
Right.
But I wanted to go like one level deeper than that, like a little more abstract with it. But like, what would sadness look like?
Right.
What color would it be? What shape would it be?
Yeah.
And so through the video, with different like color palettes and like soft edges versus hard edges versus um, just overall like kind of geometrically, how is he interpreting how he's feeling? And so because that song, it's for Behind the Bend, which is a song about reaching like rock bottom and confronting that rock bottom feeling. That song is really about like personifying my own anxiety, and if I could talk to it, what would it say to me? If I could kind of confront how I was feeling in a way that you can't literally, because you can't speak to can't speak to your feelings. But what if you could? What if you could dive into it and have a direct conversation with the thing that's making you feel the way you are? And so from there we move into the third video, which is much more of a resolution between a type of like fantasy sequences, as far as where our character would picture himself had he not spent so much time hung up feeling the way he was. If he was able to move past it, who knows what his life could have been. But that type of engaging in that fantasy it's also not useful. It's just as useless as dwelling on things that have happened that you can't help. And so by the end of the song and by the end of the video, we have a character that is starting fresh and ready to kind of walk into the unknown, because that's the only option, is to move past it.
And so the last one for I'd rather not say is like the conclusion of that sequence, and then I guess
Yeah,
like the what happens after is kind of up to interpretation at this point.
yeah, the idea that we've watched our character in a very non-specific way lose something that's important to him.
Yeah.
We don't know what that is exactly, but that's because that's not important.
Yeah.
It could be anything. It could be a loved one. It could be a relationship. It could be, I mean, literally in the last video, the 3 big things we wanted to hit were like socially, emotionally, and occupation. So we have a sequence where, oh, if only I had spent less time thinking about this, or if this had never happened, then I would be further in my career. I would have a closer relationship with my friends. I would have that family that I've always fantasized about. I would be where I thought I wanted to be.
Yeah.
But engaging in that type of thought it doesn't bring people back. It doesn't replace anything. Um, it hurts more than it helps. So by the end, we have him sort of not happily ever after, but the only option is to continue. You
Right.
can't if you spend too much time sitting around in it, then this is just going to happen over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought the idea of you guys again like centering around one character to kind of focus on was like you didn't like publicly like say like this is the same guy. So it was, the people that picked up on it like, found that
Hmm.
connection and found that it reminded me of when you know, I don't know if A Day to Remember still does this, but like a lot of their early records was like the same silhouetted guy in different
Yeah,
scenarios on the album artwork. So it was a nice. I appreciate the attention to detail on that aspect.
I appreciate you picking up on it.
Of course. So I'm just eating this scone because I haven't had lunch yet. So
That's
excuse me
fair,
for shoving this pastry into my mouth.
bro. Scone away. You're good.
Scone away. So something else that like that I noticed kind of prior to like COVID hitting and all of that, you filled in for Varials on a number of different tours and stuff like that, and I think on the podcast I was listening to, you were like, "Yeah, they hit me up and I didn't have anything going on." It was like, why wouldn't I? So was there this like kind of weird pressure where it was like, I don't know if they're gonna like drop the ass to be in the band, but do you think it also maybe helped get more eyes on your band, or was it just like, I have nothing better to do, let's just go on tour?
Um, Sort of just a combination of everything. Just like I'm not doing anything. I love performing more than anything. Um, so why not? I mean, what's the alternative? I stay home and I just go to my job and I continue working to pay my rent and hope that eventually I can go. Because I mean, at that point, we were waiting to release the album. Like we had this whole album was written and recorded about this time last year.
Oh, okay.
So we were just waiting for notes and then it was going to be put the record out.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a dead zone where we're not doing anything. So I figured I could go on tour and by the time I come back, my record will be ready. And it was, but then the entire world fell apart. But at the time it was just like I feel like I can play their songs pretty well. Um Going on tour just sounds like more fun than being home. And it was the type of thing where like opportunity, you know, I was ready for it. I've toured enough that I know I can do it. I'm comfortable. I don't care that I haven't showered. I can sleep in a van and I don't lose my voice after two shows. So I was like, why sort of just why not?
Yeah.
Is It was stressful because I had to learn the set in like a week and
Okay.
I didn't know any words to any of the songs. Not really, because most of the set was off the latest record.
Right.
Because obviously they're trying to push, hey, we just put a record out, we have to play a bunch of songs off of it.
Yeah.
So it was just a week of I made like a Spotify playlist and it was just the set list and I would just listen to it all day. And while I was listening to it, I would write down the lyrics to whatever song I was listening to
Like
try
as
and
you
like
were
really
listening to
hammer it
them.
in. Yeah.
Interesting. Hmm.
And then from there I like recorded covers of myself and then because it helps if I listen to my own voice because then I know 'cause when you listen to anything like in this genre, there's like, okay, I get that he's saying the word, tomorrow, but because of the way it's delivered and the amount of fucking rah rah rah, the gravel in the voice, it doesn't sound like tomorrow.
Right.
So I can't build that memory in my head. So I kind of did like covers where I said every word like very enunciated so that I could listen to myself say it and then I could write it down and make it all like second nature.
Yeah, well, that's all very interesting. Just like realizing the different inflections and different, way. Like I'm sure, if you were, going out with a band that was like from the deep south, there'd be some like twang or like things like that in the
Yeah.
mix of that. So it sounds like you, instead of just like listening to it and just like singing in the car, like you went to that extra mile to like really like hammer it in, like make sure that it wasn't one of those like on stage and just something doesn't connect. But
Uh,
yeah, it
I
sounds like you had it down pat.
I couldn't I couldn't properly describe the amount of anxiety I had before the first show. Holy shit, I was so nervous I was just gonna forget. Cause like play a boundary set. I've done who knows how many of those. I don't have to do any preparing. I just show up, and as soon as like the riff comes in, it all clicks.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm like, I know every timing, I know every word. This is all second nature. But for like a Varial set, it was like, okay, well they have these moments and they have these marks that they hit, and I had to learn all of them throughout an entire 30-minute set
Mhm.
with all songs I didn't know. And some of those hits are dependent on me and like how I deliver vocally. The music cuts out and it's the mosh call part. That's all focuses on me. If I fuck that up, I ruin the song.
Right.
I
Did
mean,
you sorry, did you watch like any live Varial sets to kind of like see, cuz nowadays like half the hardcore songs out there have like mosh calls within the actual record, but like
mhm.
did you watch live videos to see like, oh, like their vocalist would do something or say something like this, I might not copy and paste it on my end, but like do something similar.
I didn't. So like going into it, I didn't want to seem like I was trying to do a diet version
Sure.
of Travis, who's their old singer. Um, if I was gonna do it, I wanted to do like my version of it. So I didn't really watch anything older. I focused on making sure I knew what I was doing and less on like because everyone else in the band knows what their set usually sounds like. So I figured I would just play, and then if they come to me, 2 or 3 sets into the tour and go, "Hey, by the way, this part right here, we usually do something like this," or "You're doing this a little weird. Could you do it more like that?" Then I just would respect that. So I just figured that they would correct me along the way.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's cool. It was kind of it's also weird because being an archivist, I've had it sometimes where like a band would ask me not to put out a set because they had a fill-in bass member or someone like that, and I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, the bass, like shout out to all the bassists out there, but it's not the most important part of the band. Like especially like the vocalist, it's like, okay, I could try to empathize, but at the same time, like there's a ton of sets that I filmed that are on the channel that have like, you know, uh the drummer of this band doing this, and to me I get nerdy about that stuff. So I
Hmm.
know like Varials being a very active touring band, there's like Hate 56 sets with you, with Brendan from Counterparts or N.
Hmm.
So, it's cool to have those documented moments versus being like, oh, this isn't the true represent. Like,
Right.
if you look at the context of everything, I think you can suss that out pretty quickly.
Yeah. I mean, I'd always rather like if you think it's good enough to do it live and perform it, then why not? Then people should be able to watch it later. I don't know.
Yeah.
Seems strange.
It's probably
Um, I,
it's probably not the set that they would send, if they were, trying to push it for a bigger label or something like that. But it's just nice for people to be like, yeah, like I want to listen to Matt and the Varials, like
yeah, like I mean, it's a moment in time. I mean, this, like I said earlier, this is like a young man's game, and so the half life of everything, even most bands, I mean, they show up, they put out an LP, maybe they put out two, and then they're gone.
yeah.
So if you're still around, it seems like a mistake to me to not document everything and do sort of whatever you want. And so it's like, oh, okay, well, we're doing an entire tour with the singer filling in. It seems like a mistake to pretend like it didn't happen because you already played all those shows in front of all those people. Why not just acknowledge like, yeah, it was a thing that happened.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and especially if you're gonna go out with that person, like, aren't you not homies? Like, why would you not want
Yeah,
to
you're
do
kind
that?
of giving like implicit approval of them if they're coming along on the tour. Like clearly you thought they were good enough.
Right.
People just care too much what other people think. That's all
Yeah.
this is,
Um.
especially in music.
Yeah. Well, Matt, we're getting close to the end here, but I had a couple more questions. Connecticut is one of those places where I've personally never been. And you were saying like,
Oh, you're missing out, bro. You have no fucking idea. Shit's unreal here every day.
Just we're actually recording this on Halloween. But like, despite all that, I'm not like the biggest like horror movie type. It just doesn't do it for me. But the one horror movie that I remember seeing in theaters and being like, okay, this was a good time, was Haunting in Connecticut. So this would be a 12-year-old Spencer question, but like, is that something that's like a local legend in the area? Like, do you drive past that, or is that like
for sure.
way blown out of proportion?
I wouldn't say that it's blown out of proportion. I mean, it's like anything that they make a movie about, we're gonna turn it up to 11. It's like the Amityville shit. It's like anything like that that's like based on a true story. Right. But then when it comes to watching a movie, you gotta turn it up. We gotta make it exciting. We have to make it entertaining.
Yeah.
But yeah, Connecticut has I mean, the Northeast as a whole, because it's so old, it's so colonial. This is where 13 colonies were. So people have just lived here as far as like documented fucking white colonizers coming here and ruining everything.
Right, yeah.
It's been here the longest, so there is just a bunch of old ghost stories and shit. And so with that, Connecticut, you can look up a list and there's fucking hundreds of them of just like the 20 most haunted places. It's a very northeastern thing to be like everything is haunted.
Yeah, brought the bad, just did the bad things, and then everyone died, and now they're trying to do bad things through the afterlife as well, I guess.
Yep, tell me about it.
Is there anything like, we've jokingly like not praised Connecticut by any means on this podcast, but is there anything on there that you want to plug as far as like, if bands are coming through here, this is like a really good either local jam or like just touring route wise, whatever you think is good to praise Connecticut about.
Oof, man.
The hardest question. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I mean, not for nothing, but kinda, because I don't know. I spend most of my time in Connecticut thinking about the next time I get to leave Connecticut. There's not much happening here. It's a small state. It's in between Boston and New York, so anything really impressive or cool or interesting usually goes to one of those places instead. It serves mostly as a highway between Boston and New York. Connecticut has some good food for sure. Vegan spots have become a little more popular, which is nice, because it used to be like my friends would come through and be like, so where's cool? It's like, there's this one diner, we're gonna go to that one diner.
Right.
But it's a little more popular now, especially if you're in like the New Haven area, which is sort of just barely in Connecticut, more towards New York. But it is a little more hipsterish, and there are a lot of cooler vegan spots. So I guess if you're gonna do anything in Connecticut, it would be something related to the food, at least vegan food. Everything. I mean, Connecticut has a pretty big reputation surrounding like its pizza and stuff, especially in New Haven.
Oh, okay.
But if that's not your thing and you're not eating animal products, then there's also a couple of good vegan spots in New Haven or in Middletown. I guess that would really be it. It's the only thing worth checking out, kinda. I mean, there's like 2 venues. Any DIY spot closes within a year usually, which sucks, but it's just, especially right now, there's not exactly new ones popping up.
Mm.
If you're gonna play anywhere in Connecticut, you kind of just play the Webster, which is a spot that used to really suck, but they cared enough about it to kind of clean it up and rebuild it and make it a place where it actually feels like a venue again, and less like someone's gonna break into your car when you're there. People will still break into your car, but at least you'll play a good show and everything will sound good.
Right. Yeah. And I guess like to a degree, like, even if it's in a weirder spot of the world, like food can really be like, oh, well, like I want to go back there just so I can have that za again, or have that coffee, or that vegan.
Absolutely.
Whatever. So yeah, food does go a long way. So I wouldn't say that is like,
especially on tour.
Yes, especially on tour for sure. So sorry, you go.
I was just say there's in Omaha, fucking Nebraska of all places, there was this venue called Lookout Lounge. It fucking sucked, huge dick. But down the street, there's like this family-owned vegan pizza spot, and it's adorable. And it's literally it's just like one family that works there. And they're like, we used to just make pizza, but then one of us went vegan. Now we all went vegan. Now it's a vegan spot, and it's so cute and so good. I wish I could remember the name of it, but like anytime I played Omaha, it'd be like, okay, we're loaded in. I'll see all of you 10 minutes before we play. I'm going to the pizza spot.
Right.
And I would just sit there and fucking meal out on pizza for hours and feel like garbage and then go play a set.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you saying that, because that is the example of what we just talked about. Like, you could go to like there's a plethora of just really isolated parts of Western Canada, or just Canada as a whole. But we do have great food, and if people come up here and play, I always try to like point them in the right direction to you know, years later, you're like thinking about it, even on the fact of not being able to tour. Yeah,
is killing time. I mean, until you have to like you show up early enough to load your stuff in, but then you have like kind of all day to kill, so you have to turn getting food or going to get coffee into like a 6-hour thing. So then you find all the cool spots.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure there's people that just like show up and fuck off and sleep in the van or whatever. But like anytime I show up, it's like, okay, what's near me?
Right.
What can I walk to? And then from there, you find things that like, oh shit, we're playing, fucking Richmond, Virginia again. Last time we were there, we got this insane. This place was all right, but it had like the most fucking crazy vegan cornbread I've ever eaten. So now it's load in and it's go get that cornbread.
Yeah.
It's just, it's something that makes touring and traveling to spots that are unfamiliar and not, you're not just at home. It makes it feel a little more familiar.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, food is the universal language, as they say.
Right.
Yeah. So, Matt, the final segment that we do here on the podcast is a favorite Mosh story that you would like to share. So that doesn't need to necessarily be something that happened at a Boundary show or something that you did, or someone that hit you. Just whatever is the first thing to your mind is how we'll start to wrap it up here.
Probably it would be at our last release show for My Body in Bloom. Like 10 of my friends got into a fight and they didn't know they were fighting each other just because it was so dark. Someone got hit and then someone turned around and punched the other guy. And it's like 10 of my friends. They all know each other, but it's just you're so in the moment.
Right.
They fought and like 6 of them got kicked out. And it was like, and then like now they're outside and they're looking at the person they were fighting and it's like, oh shit, it's Mike. That's probably my favorite one. It's just all of my idiot friends not realizing that they were fighting each other.
Kind of like that Looney Tunes cartoon brawl where it's just the cloud of smoke and everyone's jumping in, the fists are
going. And then like the guy they're fighting walks out and then they're all still fighting.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty much exactly that.
That imagery is perfectly painted. So so Matt, this has been a blast to chat with you. I'm probably, if I'm being honest, I'm probably a little late to the Boundaries game as far as like seeing you guys, but out of most metalcore releases that are coming out this year, yours is probably one of the ones I'm most excited for.
Thank you.
So is there anything that you want to plug, any handles that you want to shout out? The floor is yours for whatever you want to send people off with.
Just I guess if you're not familiar with any of the singles we put out for the record, they were chosen super intentionally to show kind of the spectrum of what you can expect from the release, as far as parts that are much more metal, parts that are much more melodic and softer, and then certain parts that kind of call back a little bit to some of our older sound. Those 3 songs should give you an idea of the record. So I guess just if you haven't checked it out, you could check out any of the music videos we put out. And if you like any of the songs, then you'll probably like the record. It's, I would say each song on there has like a sibling song on the record that hasn't been released. So if you liked the first track we put out, then the first 2 tracks also fit along with that really well. If you like the second track we put out, then you're really going to like the title track too. If you like the one we just put out, then the other 30 or 40% of the record really locks into that sound as well. So sort of, if you've enjoyed any of it, I'm not saying you have to buy it by any means, but just when it comes out in 2 weeks, if you have Spotify or Apple Music or anything you stream it on, give it a listen. And if you're going to listen to it, I would ask that you start on track 1 and just let it play through.
Yeah.
Because
don't do that shuffle shit.
That album is very deliberately track listed the way it is. So even if you hate it after, just give me a track 1 and let it end on track 11. And then if you hate it, fucking just tweet at me and tell me my record was dog shit. That's fine.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking ahead. This podcast is probably going to drop either the day before, or the day after the record comes out. So check the clock, check the calendar, and I'm a firm believer to support any band giving us new music during this time. As you were saying, things were recorded a lot earlier and got delayed, but you guys, are not, I wouldn't say sucking it up, but you're going a step beyond to still, put it out kind of during this weird time. And like I said before, you obviously care a lot about the music and the intention and the why behind a lot of what you're doing, and not just, creating the tough gym song. So I appreciate that.
For sure.
I appreciate your time, Matt, and I hope we can do this again soon.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. This is a good time. I like this.
Good. Yeah, I'm. Maybe we'll do some more coffee chat, or a podcast just related to
just coffee,
just the beat.